The film begins in 1981, showing the Panggonan Hotel. The hotel manager Suktini tasks Ningram with cleaning the second floor and cautions her against going to the third floor, mentioning it is presently under renovation. Now, as Ningram works on the second floor, she hears the sound of a woman crying. Following the source of the sound, she reaches the closed door of the third floor. Just as Ningram begins to retreat, the door opens by itself. Concerned that someone might be in trouble, Ningram ventures onto the third floor, but suddenly, the lights start flickering, causing her to feel a sense of unease. She realizes the crying is emanating from within a room with no number, and as she opens the door to investigate, she sees a woman sitting inside who utters 3 days, midnight. 2 days later, Ningram shares the eerie incident with her daughter, explaining how fear compelled her to shut the door and leave. However, the following day brought a series of bizarre occurrences. She discovered their cat dead, their neighbor Yono had stabbed himself in the foot, and her aunt Ayu leapt from the hospital roof. Ningram, noting it was the 3rd day, admits she's frightened. Karin points out that Yono was mentally ill. Aunt Ayu had been in a mental hospital for 2 years, and their cat was quite old. She suggests these events are likely unrelated to the mysterious woman she encountered. Karin suggests her to pray to clear her mind, and as she does, her reflection in the mirror disappears, and the white woman appears behind her. And as Ningram bends, the entity comes out of the mirror and begins crawling towards her. Despite her fear, Ning continues to pray, and after a while, the entity disappears. Scared, Ning rushes to her room and tries to sleep. But she hears someone calling her name, and as she checks, the entity attacks her, and when Karin rushes to her room, hearing her scream, she gets terrified seeing her flayed, lifeless body there. 3 days later, we see Raina and her sister Faye, whose dad has been dead for 2 months. They both reach Panggonan Hotel, and we come to know that this hotel, built in the 1950s, was inherited by their dad's parents. There, they are greeted by Garantu and Suktini, who lead them to their residence located just behind the hotel. It turns out their father had taken a loan from the bank and was unable to repay it, resulting in their house being confiscated. Before leaving, Suktini tells them to stay away from the 3rd floor of the hotel, as it's closed for renovation. The following day, Raina takes Faye to her new school. As they wait for the headmaster, they overhear conversations about the police and reporters visiting the school due to the tragic death of Karin's mother. Sometime later, as the reporter exits the headmaster's office, Faye realizes that he is Ardo, her ex-boyfriend. Outside, Ardo approaches her, but he notices her attempts to ignore him. As she begins to leave, he urges her to be careful, and then proceeds to inform her about Raina's incident. Ardo reveals that both he and the police are investigating the matter, and he is on his way to the victim's workplace, which he discloses is the Panggonan Hotel. Next, we see them at the hotel, where Raina tells her grandparents that they should have informed her about the situation. Garantu explains that they didn't want Raina and Faye to feel frightened. Ardo interjects, saying he'll require more information from the locals and the police, and he intends to stay at the hotel. Later that night, Raina observes a light illuminating a room on the 3rd floor of the hotel. Intrigued, she hurries to investigate and hears the sound of a woman crying. However, upon reaching the door, she discovers it is locked. Worried, she breaks the lock with a hammer and enters the floor, where she realizes that the cries are emanating from within a room. Raina cautiously opens the door to peek inside, only to find a woman seated in front of a mirror, and the woman solemnly utters 3 days, midnight, prompting Raina to quietly retreat. The following day, Raina recounts the previous night's incident to Suktini, questioning why there was a guest on the 3rd floor, and Suktini becomes visibly frightened upon hearing this. Just then, Faye arrives, and Raina excuses herself to accompany Faye to school. Later, upon Raina's return, she observes that all the guests are checking out and notices police investigating the hotel. Suddenly, the phone rings, and when Raina answers, A woman instructs her to bring towels to room number 13. Raina arrives at room number 13 with a towel, and as she prepares to leave, she hears crying coming from the bathroom. Worried, she asks if the guest is okay, but receives no response, and upon opening the door, Raina discovers that the bathroom is empty. As Raina tries to leave, she notices movement under the carpet. Investigating further, she becomes terrified as she sees the entity moving toward her, but she manages to get out of the room, and just then, Ardo arrives and attempts to calm Raina down. Together, they enter the room to investigate, only to find everything appearing normal. Later, the hotel staff, frightened by what happened to Raina, decide to quit their jobs. Ardo arrives and informs them that due to Ningrum's daughter repeatedly mentioning the mysterious woman in the hotel, everyone is linking Ningrum's death to her presence. Additionally, with what happened to Raina earlier, people are convinced. Suktini then reveals that 6 years ago, they were facing financial difficulties. Her father suggested that they could run a hotel he had inherited and use the income to support themselves. They were astonished to learn about her father's inheritance. During the renovation process, an electrician opened the room, claiming to have seen a woman with snow-white skin and red eyes who uttered the ominous words, 3 days, midnight. Following that incident, strange occurrences began to unfold in the hotel, and 3 days later, at midnight, the electrician tragically died. They sought the help of Ki Denong, a highly respected shaman, but even he informed them that they could not rid of that woman and warned them emphatically never to open that door. Meanwhile, at school, Faye's teacher instructs her to retrieve the biology equipment from the storeroom. While searching through the box, she hears her name being called. Confused, she looks around but finds no one there. Suddenly, she realizes the voice is emanating from a human anatomy model covered with a cloth. The entity utters, "Feel it before you die," before grabbing a pair of scissors and advancing toward her. Faye becomes terrified and attempts to defend herself, and as the cloth covering the model is removed, it launches an attack on her, but Faye manages to flee from the room. Later, when Faye returns home, Raina notices that she is terrified. She asks Faye if she didn't open the room with no number on the 3rd floor, to which Faye responds that she did. She explains that she saw light coming from that room, so she went there to check. She saw someone crying, and there was a woman in that room. Raina and Ardo decide to consult Danang, who informs them that they cannot rid themselves of the woman. He explains that he cannot communicate with her and cannot ascertain her name, emphasizing the importance of knowing a name to deal with the unseen. Later that evening, Raina tells everyone that they need to read all her dad's novels, because before he died, her dad told her that he had secrets that he put into his work. As Raina sits outside reading a novel, the room on the 3rd floor suddenly begins to illuminate. And after some time, when Ardo comes out, he notices Raina is not there. Here, Raina is on the verge of entering the 3rd floor, but Ardo intervenes, stopping her. Raina explains to him that she intends to enter the room because she believes they may find something that could provide a clue about the woman haunting them. She emphasizes that if they fail to uncover the truth, both she and Faye could die. Faye insists on accompanying her, and when Ardo suggests that all 3 of them enter together, Raina adamantly refuses to let him go inside. Raina and Faye cautiously enter the room, their hearts filled with fear, and commence their investigation. After some time, Faye catches a glimpse of the woman behind her in the mirror, but when she turns around, she finds no one there, and moments later, the candle in Faye's hand extinguishes on its own. Meanwhile, Raina discovers a piece of paper with something written on it. Suddenly, she hears some noise, and when she goes to check, she finds Faye banging her head. Raina rushes to stop her, but Faye turns and utters, "Suffer until you die." Then Faye turns with a demonic face and attacks Raina, and when Raina struggles to free herself, Faye jumps on the wall and then leaps back towards her to continue the assault. Ardo arrives to assist Raina and pushes Faye away, breaking her out of possession. Together, they spot the woman in the room, who repeats the ominous phrase, 3 days, midnight. Prompted by this, all 3 of them hastily exit the room. The following day, they discover the number 2 mysteriously written on a mirror in their room. Later, Raina shows the piece of paper to Ardo, who speculates that perhaps the woman previously resided in that room, and this could imply her father knew the woman and granted her permission to stay there. Just then, Raina's grandparents arrive and hand them some pieces of paper, explaining that they found them while cleaning rooms number 1, 2, and 3, under a cracked tile underneath the bed. Ardo suggests they need to find the rest of the pieces, to which Garinta responds that during the room furnishing process, he noticed many cracked tiles, but never investigated what was underneath them. They retrieve all the pieces and assemble them, discovering that the letter is a love letter addressed to Raina's dad from a woman named Jasmine. Using the clues from the letter, they travel to White Flower Village to uncover the identity of the woman. There, they learn that the woman is Manoor, the daughter of the village chief Soimardi. She was given the name because she was as white as the menure flower that has been around their village for ages. Manoor was born at midnight with a rare condition, which led to her being labeled as the devil's child by the villagers. Due to her condition, her father often confined her to their home and subjected her to physical abuse. However, when she reached the age of 20, she decided to leave and never returned. The following day, Faye discovers the number 3 written on one of the windows, and just then, Raina and Ardo also return. That night, Danang performs a ritual on the 3rd floor of the hotel. In his vision, he sees Manoor entering the forest of pine trees, where Raina's father Bhaskara found her and offered assistance. Bhaskara brought Manoor to his hotel, and since it was the only furnished room available, he allowed her to stay there. As time passed, their bond grew stronger, and they eventually fell in love. However, one day Bhaskara left for Jakarta to do business. While awaiting Bhaskara's return, Manoor wrote a letter and concealed its pieces in various rooms of the hotel, intending for Bhaskara to piece it together upon his return. However, Bhaskara never came back. Manoor traveled to Jakarta in search of Bhaskara, only to discover him with another woman. Heartbroken and devastated, Manoor returned home, and believing her appearance to be the cause of Bhaskara's betrayal, she flayed the skin from her entire body with her own hands for 3 days until she died. Danang suggests that, to put an end to the turmoil, they must heal Manoor's broken heart and quell her anger. He proposes that they find something that can make Manoor forgive her dad and bring it to Manoor's physical body. Suddenly, Manoor's ghost begins banging on the door, and as Danang attempts to control the situation, Manoor angrily declares that she wants him to feel her pain before he dies. In a panic, all 3 of them try to flee, but the door breaks, causing Danang to fall down the stairs. Raina and Ardo rush to help Danang, but they halt in horror as they witness Manoor in the reflection of the mirror attacking him. And tragically, Manoor ultimately kills him by tearing apart his face. Later, Faye shows Ardo some papers, revealing them to be love letters from Bhaskara to Manoor. When they check the box, they discover a ring inside. Ardo shares the letter with Raina, who learns that Bhaskara hadn't actually left for work, but had gone to purchase a ring for Manoor to propose marriage. However, he met with an accident on his way back, resulting in his memory loss. The couple whose car caused the Bhaskara accident brought him up as their own son, and even got him married. When Bhaskara eventually regained his memory, he returned to Semarang in search of Manoor, only to find her remains there. Bhaskara buried Manoor's remains beneath the hotel, and carved a white flower on the wall as a memorial to her. Afterward, he returned to Jakarta, changed his name, and began a new life, leaving his past behind him. Raina and Ardo embark on a quest beneath the hotel to locate Manoor's remains. Meanwhile, Raina's grandparents and Faye remain upstairs, offering prayers for their safety. Even after digging for a long time, when Raina and Ardo do not find anything there, Raina checks the ring and realizes that it's not the flower carving on the wall they were looking for. Just then, Ardo falls down and he begins to get possessed. Overcome by an unknown force, he turns against Raina, attacking her in a frenzied attempt to end her life. However, Raina manages to break free from Ardo's grasp, and she flees from the scene to escape the danger. While Ardo pursues her, she returns to that dig and conceals herself within, and when Ardo arrives searching for her, she strikes him, rendering him unconscious. Feeling uncertain about her next steps, Raina decides to pray, asking God for protection for herself and her loved ones, and seeking guidance. Following her prayer, she resumes her search for the flower carving, and, after a while, she finds it. Raina excavates the ground and uncovers the remains of Manoor. However, before she can place the ring on, Ardo launches an attack from behind. Struggling to defend herself, Raina perseveres and, after much effort, manages to slip the ring onto Manowar's finger, and the moment she does, Ardo is released from the possession. Following this, as they both emerge from the pit, the soul of Manowar appears before them, and, after a brief moment, vanishes. The following day, before departing for Jakarta, Ardo proposes marriage to Raina, and she accepts. Later that night, Ardo receives a call with no one on the other end, and suddenly, the lights in his room go out. Attempting to leave the room, he finds the door locked, but notices the closet door swinging open. As the clock strikes 12, Ardo hears Manowar's voice, and in the mirror, he sees her reflection. Manowar starts advancing toward him, and to Ardo's horror, he witnesses her emerging from the mirror. Ardo becomes terrified as she crawls closer to him, and the scene abruptly ends there. The next morning, when Raina enters his room, she is horrified to find Ardo's lifeless body lying there. Later, Raina asks Faye why both of them survived while Ardo did not. Faye explains that Manowar's broken heart has been healed because she now knows that their father still loved her. As a result, Manowar won't harm them because they are their father's daughters. However, Manowar is still in pain due to how others treated her. Faye warns that anyone else who enters that room, apart from the two of them, will face the same fate. She says Manowar can't leave this world because people who commit suicide don't have a place in the other world. Alarmed, Raina asks Faye how she knows all this, and to her horror, she realizes that Faye is possessed by Manowar. Manowar reassures Raina that she won't harm her, and after a while, Manowar exits Faye's body. The scene transitions to Raina and Faye leaving the hotel with their grandparents, deciding to put the hotel up for sale, and the movie ends here. Thanks for facing the frights with us. If you survived this video, drop a like, summon that subscribe button, and brace yourself for more horror. Until next time, stay spooked.